Good day, TechCentral. I'm Barry de Waal from Ninth Consulting. I'm the Chief Exec looking after strategy and sales. And we're here today to talk about shifting left and what DevSecOps and the whole agile transformation means.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Barry. Thanks for joining us.
How's it, guys? Hilbert here from CYBER1. I'm the General Manager, Sales Europe. And I'm here joining TechCentral and Barry to see how cyber and security is joining the DevSecOps space.
Superb. And welcome to TechCentral. To all our listeners, we're ready today, especially looking at how to speed up the delivery without compromising or giving way to the importance of quality. Hilbert and Barry, thank you very, very much for joining us in studio today. I think this is a fascinating piece to talk about, and especially this logic of shifting left.
Yeah.
And giving the responsibility and the ownership of the value and the product to someone who might otherwise have thrown it over the wall. Can we unpack that a bit further?
Yeah.
Yeah, look, let me have a stab at that first.
Please, Barry.
You know, the shifting left is a concept, is a phrase that is being thrown around quite a bit these days. What it really means is to get those siloed activities that typically end up later on in the software delivery lifecycle brought forward and actually take control of what needs to be delivered at the front of the organization change, if that makes sense.
Again, can we use a practical example perhaps?
So what we've seen from a CYBER1 perspective is, as a traditional cyber company selling security into organizations, we've seen the development in the companies that we're dealing with is starting to pull in the cyber teams more and more.
Okay.
So in that, creating itself a shift left component, because the cyber teams were always the last to be pulled in to that life cycle from a development perspective. And that's also why we've created a partnership with Ninth Consulting.
And I think if I can add to what Hilbert is saying in terms of the security being pulled in earlier on in the life cycle, it's not just the security, it is also the testing, it is also the infrastructure that needs to be put together. Quite often you will have teams that all they want to do is get their feature list out. And inevitably, down the line, it takes a lot longer than if there is a problem from a security or from a infrastructure provisioning or a cloud infrastructure as code that is not done properly, and it goes back to day dot of refactoring the features that needs to be done. So I think the shift left domain gives us an iterative approach to address those issues, be it security, be it performance testing. If you iterate that earlier on in the life cycle, chances of getting a successful and a very quick delivery of the product to market is greatly enhanced.
Okay, so what I'm very clearly understanding here is there's a continuum from left to right, and value gets created in that chain.
Agreed.
Obviously, up front, there's a whole lot of planning, and planning often talks about we're going to need security, we're going to need compliance and risk, and all these other functions which are so critical to the ultimate delivery of value in the product before it can be perhaps be even beta tested, for instance. But by bringing those services and those functions forward, i.e. to the left of that continuum, you're incorporating them and including them in the planning so that when development happens, they are taking those critical factors into account.
Absolutely. Shared responsibility.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Continuous investment, continuous improvement.
Yep.
Yeah.
Continuous investment, continuous improvement. Agile, DevOps, security. That's it.
Yeah. So I think if we take one step back, in the past, security was always seen as the prohibitor in the development life cycle. And I think with the whole shifting left and the notion of security being an enabler rather than a prohibitor, we've seen that entire shift, so security being pulled in a lot earlier into the life cycle.
And that shared responsibility, which I think you mentioned,
Yes.
is also bringing value sooner and
Yes.
solving what pain points?
So there's a couple of pain points that I can list here. First and foremost, you're getting your product out a lot quicker, a lot securely.
Yeah.
We all live in the worlds of GDPR and POPIA and other data protection acts across the continent and the world for that matter. And I think that being able to, at the planning stage, understand what you are wanting to guard against.
But I'm a developer. I don't necessarily understand compliance and risk.
You might say that, but I think this is the agile manifesto change that needs to happen in organizations. We're talking about business agility. We're not just talking about development agility. We're talking about business agility.
Thank you.
And therefore, everyone needs to care.
Yeah.
If you are a developer that only wants to cut your code and don't worry about performance and don't worry about the security aspects of it, I can guarantee that you're not going to have a job for very long, to be quite honest.
No.
So I think maybe my analogy of throwing things over the wall means that you may not even have a wall to throw it over.
Agreed.
Yeah. And if you also look at job postings these days, how often do you see a title for can we please have a Java developer, or please can we have a C# developer? They're talking about full stack developers. They're talking about site reliability engineers. That is certainly what the market is starting to look for when they employ people. They're looking for people that can multitask, multidiscipline, and add value in this continuum that you're talking about. So I think the oaks that will get the big bucks are the oaks that are prepared to say, listen, I want to develop my code more securely. I want to develop my code that performs. I want to document it to the extent that it's easy understandable when it goes down that passage.
It sounds so logical that you talk about ownership. So you want someone to start building their code and know, I own this, I own the problem, and I own the solution.
Correct. The entire life cycle of that problem.
Can we talk a bit about the DevOps and the security piece of the DevOps sec, and where CYBER1 sees that as an opportunity and this collaboration with Ninthbit?
Yeah. So from a CYBER1 perspective, we've always been a traditional cyber security company. And as I said earlier, we've seen the need and the move from the development cycle and the security teams starting to collaborate a lot closer. And in saying that, that is why we've collaborated with Ninthbit. So in theory, causing our own shift left by working with Barry.
I love it. I made some notes here, and I think that you're clearly illustrating that there's a shift in mindset.
Yeah.
There's a shared responsibility, and I'm not just talking
100%.
about security.
Agreed.
There's strong collaboration. There are going to be some processes that need to be reviewed. Changes to those processes need to get underway. Organizations need to consider their structures.
Yes.
You know, we talk about job descriptions, but actually, what is your role?
Yeah.
What is your role within a team, a squad, a business unit? How does that influence how you deliver the work ultimately and add value to the end user? Business agility. And then also, my guess is, and I'd love you to talk a bit about this, but there are going to be some tools, and we're sitting on TechCentral talking about technology.
Yeah.
Technology is the enabler of the mindset shift I've just referred to. What does that look like from a tooling perspective?
Yeah, I hate calling them tools. I like to call them enablers because they enable you to do your job. It's not a tool that you're implementing.
So it's not a hammer.
It's not a hammer.
Yeah.
Correct. And I am going to quote a good friend of mine, Chris Mulder, who always says that a lot of organisations have more tools than common sense.
It sounds like a job description.
It sounds like a job description. But I think what is very important in that notion is that tools ain't necessarily going to get you to the goal that you want unless you have the people change, the skill, the cadence of which tooling to use at the right time. And that forms part of the process, I guess. People, process, technology or product. At least that's been bandied about quite often.
Yeah.
But so let's talk about the tooling and let's talk about the enablement. Various customers are at different levels of maturity in their, call it digital transformation, their business agility play. And I think it is sometimes very difficult for an organization that is not at the correct maturity state to take on some of the enablers or some of the tooling that they use. So finding a partner or finding in your own environment the correct roadmap for adoption, what needs to be done for you to take the next steps in the maturity, and where will the tooling add value to your life. You can have a Rolls Royce, you can have a Ferrari, but if you only have a 50cc motorbike license, you ain't going to be able to get the value out of the vehicle that you want. And I think therein lies the conversation about where do I start? How do I start? Of course, tools and those enablers will make your life easier, but pick the right one with the right advice for the right reasons. And I think that is sort of the more tools than common sense.
And who are you having these conversations with, quite specifically?
From our perspective, or if you're the customer?
If I'm the customer, who within the organization are you addressing?
Okay, very good point. Now, you will walk into some organizations, and this talks to the maturity, who do not have the concept of agile masters. They don't have the concept of a release manager or an SRE practice. They just don't exist. What they do have is they've got IT operations, they've got head of development and engineering, they've got head of security. So that already is a very traditional landscape that's out there. And you need to speak to all of these if you want to get to that collaborative buy-in into affecting the change. What we see is he who has the biggest pain normally comes and talks to you first. If it's on the operations side, if there was a failed release or a failed deployment, because it was scripted, but it was very manually scripted. You still had a lot of human fingers and errors in that process. Maybe you start your journey by automating your deployment as the first step. And once you've got that down pat and you're starting to build your pipelines, you then go and say, okay, well, how do I introduce security as part of this? And to hook onto what Hilbert said earlier on, from a security perspective, and those converging, collaborating is the word I think you used, but almost say the converging of what typically is in the cybersecurity space vis-a-vis what's in the development space. You need a shared KPI. A shared KPI between those environments.
Agreed.
So that collaboration needs to happen, and I think is starting to permeate quite a lot. So who do we talk to? We need to talk to the people who have the pain. We need to talk to the people who actually care about this. How often have we heard, well, no, I'll just pay the 400,000 Rand fine as opposed to buying the 2 million Rand implementation and tooling for this. So you need to find the guys that care, and ladies. You need to find the people that care across the domain to get that collaboration going.
Okay, and it also, part of my question is also about cost. My guess is there's a consultative process and some hand-holding that happens, because naturally there's no one-size-fits-all, and you go and you immerse yourself in that environment, become a trusted contributor, and you guide teams or enterprises to a point where they're able to use it. And my guess is, and this is perhaps a question, is that model scalable? Could we start somewhere small and then ramp it up?
100%. I think that's what we do so well as a collaboration, is we start at point A and we see it through until completion. And even if the project is completed or that life cycle is completed, we're still involved after the completion.
Okay, so there's a relationship there.
100%.
Okay.
It is a relationship. I am going to put a little proviso in there, though.
Yeah.
For me, successful adoption of these things means ownership from the organization.
Agreed.
So as much as we can come in and help you get going, start small, scale up. If that scale up and that knowledge transfer and that enablement is not done with the customer people involved,
I love it.
It is a problem. There's no ownership. And I think for this to succeed, and there's a myriad of epic failures of DevSecOps adoption. I maybe will share 2 links with you on 2 books that were Volume 1 and Volume 2 that was written on this.
Okay, please, and we'll refer to them in the write-up to this.
Absolutely. I can certainly do that.
Thanks.
But the point that I wanted to make there is that if we go through this enablement process with our customers, there needs to be buy-in, there needs to be knowledge transfer. And it almost like, the first couple of sprints, we do most of the work and we start handing over and become not the doer, but the overseer, the advisor, the helper in that.
Correct.
And I think that process is one that can scale. We talk about hyperlearning labs, dojos. It's also a concept that has been around for quite some time, where grab your first squad or your first couple of squads, get them enabled, and then break those squads up. And make more squads out of
self-sufficient.
Exactly. And make and get that real life experience in terms of how you adopt these enablers, how you adopt these toolings into the market.
So basically what we're saying is we can gamify the DevSecOps thing.
Okay.
So where we've got teams going up against each other to see who is going to be the best developer. Who's going to be the team that does it the best and the most secure? And in thus training them as we go along and making it fun.
And then they get something to own and brag
100%.
about.
100%.
No, absolutely.
Hilbert, tell me a bit about the UK operation, because you're based in London.
I am. It's a recent move. So we're trying to get out into the European market. CYBER1 is a global company, offices into Africa, Dubai. And it was a decision that was made by the execs and the board that we believe that we could go into that European market and try and attack and provide what we're doing here for the last 25 years.
Okay.
The skill and the knowledge that we've got in this industry from a cyber perspective is phenomenal. And I think also with this partnership that we've got with 9th, taking that DevSecOps story into Europe is going to be a game changer for us.
Thank you very much, Hilbert, and thanks for explaining that, because I think that a lot of what we do as TechCentral is build these relationships.
Yes.
And we've got an amazing relationship with CYBER1 Solutions, and I love what you guys do, and I love to hear the stories.
Yeah.
And we also love to have you in studio. So thank you very much for this collaboration. And I think what 9th are doing, especially on the DevSecOps piece, and bringing security into the development space, and bringing those responsibilities back into the developers, the planners, the testers, bringing all those functions into an environment where they can start to own and design it the way in which they know it's going to add value to the organization, their own organization, but also to their customer.
100%.
And that's clearly what you've reiterated today. So from me, James Erasmus at TechCentral, Hilbert, Barry, thank you very, very much for joining us. We've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation and hope that there are plenty more conversations to be had.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.